Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. I hope you're having a really fantastic morning and everything's going well for you. It's the spring season and I'm sure you're getting ready to plant. And I've just had this on my mind, and I've had a couple comments about fertilizer being very confusing. And I understand you and I hear you. But because you are my favorite viewer, I want to talk about it. And this is gonna be ongoing throughout the season, but we're gonna try to break this down. And today we're gonna start really simple. I mean, other than soil health, which it does contribute to soil health, this bed of lettuce I totally give it to my fertilizing regimen, and the speed and size of growth is what it comes to. And that goes for really everything here. So this is gonna kind of break it down for you and hopefully make it so you can start to understand this. Okay, so first things first, I need to tell you about my history with fertilizer and where I stand with it. So clearly, I'm big into using fertilizer. I do believe in it. I do think it's important, but I also think that things like compost, mulch, just general soil health is really good for us to manage it, because all of this is just basically more and more insurance on better garden health. Now, I know there's people that are against fertilizer, and to those who just clicked off, which I guess I'm a little too late, sorry, but this can really change your game, but we just need to understand it. And I do think personally that a lot of what people that don't like fertilizer, they just don't really understand it because it can be very complicated. But I don't want it to be complicated. I want you guys to be able to understand it and know what to put in. So this is like the spring edition for fertilizer, meaning we're really gonna focus on the spring crops. And then when it comes time for summer, we'll do another one somehow, some way, and I'll try and get it early in the season when these crops are going in. But it'll start to help you be able to plan out your method to basically help your garden along and speed up the process. So other than the onions and the potatoes, what do we see in common with everything else in the garden right now? Everything is all about the leaves. And I mean, if you just walk through, you can see leaves, leaves, leaves. Rutabagas aren't leaves, more leaves. The broccoli over there, leaves. So all of this stuff has something in common. The first thing is your nitrogen, and your nitrogen is what is going to really push leaf growth, okay? And this is really important to understand because you want big leaves for these crops. The more leaves you get, the stronger it can get, the more energy it can consume and go up. So that's your your nitrogen. So when you do the nitrogen, just remember that that's what you're gonna get. So if you do it in the summertime, like for instance, squash, if you use too much nitrogen, you're just gonna get a lot of leaves and you're not really gonna get a lot of fruits. So we got to be prepared for that. And you need to understand that that can be that can be a side effect of using too much of the wrong nutrient in the fertilizer. So through this conversation, we're not really going to talk about brands, and I'm not really going to break down synthetic and organic. I've done that ad nauseum, and I'll probably have that conversation again. We're just going to focus on the nutrient aspect of it. And then I'll give you a recommendation to get you started. And then the tricky one is phosphorus. So that's your P. So all fertilizer is made up of NPK. And so your phosphorus is responsible for helping your plants, as I understand it, could be wrong, but this is from what I understand, to uptake nutrients and minerals into the plant and allow it to really enhance its growth. Now, the reason why it's tricky is because a lot of soil is heavy in phosphorus already. Unlike nitrogen, which I didn't mention earlier, but nitrogen is water soluble, which means it'll wash out of your garden. You can take your garden and you can overwater and you will wash out the nitrogen, whereas phosphorus stays in the soil. So a lot of times you can have too much phosphorus, but don't let that freak you out, okay? Just remember, and when we get to the recommendation, you'll see why I say this, but don't worry about it. Just don't get anything that has extra phosphorus in it. So all fertilizer has numbers on it, 10, 10, 10, 4, 3, 4, stuff like that. You just don't want to get anything where the middle number is higher than the other numbers unless you have a deficiency, which the only way you're going to tell is with a soil test. But I have too much phosphorus in my garden. I've got it tested and I had a lot of phosphorus in it, so I don't add any extra. And that's why I will lean heavy and put just nitrogen in there in the form of like blood meal or something like that. There are ways to tell if you have too much of a certain nutrient or something like that. And for right now, if you need to know that right now, for the sake of this video, then I'm going to suggest that you go look it up and do your own research. But when it comes to the garden, for right now, we're just going to focus on just basics of fertilizer. And this is what's going to get you started. So then we have the K, all right? That's your potassium. And this is something that forms roots, right? But it has more than just roots. So for instance, these potatoes, I got a little tongue twisted there. Tomatoes and potatoes be twisting me. Potatoes need a little bit more potassium to form the roots because what are we harvesting? The root. But it's also related to water and nutrient uptake into the plant. So if you have not enough potassium, you could get, first of all, you won't have a lot of drought resistance in your garden. A lot of times this is what causes like blight in tomatoes and stuff like that, and watermelons, all these different things, you know, the soft spots at the ends you get. A lot of times it's just because it's not getting the right amount, and because it doesn't have enough potassium, it can't take up enough calcium into the plant because it's related to how available it is and how much it can pull into the plant. So I know it starts to get a little complicated, but what you need to remember is you need to remember to get a well-balanced fertilizer, okay? So if nothing else, you do nothing else and you decide this year like, hey, I'm gonna start fertilizing, this is what I wanna do, then you just get a bag of fertilizer that has the numbers the same, 10, 10, 10, 3, 3, 3, 20, 20, 20. The higher the numbers doesn't mean it's a stronger fertilizer necessarily, it's just the ratio within the fertilizer. So, oh, look at that, my first pest of the year. Boosh, she gone. So, you know, if you get that in, then you're not really gonna twist up your garden too much as far as excess nutrients go. When you start getting a little bit more technical, and like I get a little bit more technical in the spring because I know that they need more nitrogen, but that's just as simple as putting in the 10, 10, 10 and then a straight nitrogen into some of the beds for the leaves. You know, I'll put in like blood meal, I believe is like 14, 0, 0. So that means it's just nitrogen. It's not adding anything else. And a lot of times, if you see your plants are yellowish, they're not really growing, other than like not watering or not enough sun or something like that, a dose of nitrogen is definitely going to help you. And so when we look at it too, you have to look at the aspect of, okay, am I going to use granular fertilizer or liquid fertilizer? And so for the sake of this part, we're only going to talk about organic fertilizers because I have the opinion that most of you, if you're going to use fertilizer, only want to use organic. Come over to my broccoli bed, which let's do a broccoli head check. There you go, getting bigger. Then we'll take our granular fertilizer and you put it directly on the soil, but because it's organic, you need to just scratch it into the soil. So you can just take like a light hoe or something like that and do it. But like you see here, the problem with this bed is I can't really get into it. You know what I mean? Like I can't really get all the way down there and get it all through the garden. So that's why I try and focus on my granular fertilizers until my beds start to get like this. Then we'll graduate from there. The granular fertilizers, because they're organic, they're going to have to break down, and they're going to have to break down in the soil, so there's a delayed release. I will use a fish fertilizer, like I've said before. I believe, actually I've got a bottle of it right here. I can tell you it's a 3-3-2. So it's got more nitrogen. So it's got the equal amounts of nitrogen and phosphorus, and then it's got a little bit of potassium in it. And so you can even get some that are like 5-2-1, stuff like that. And what we're really focusing on here is getting the nitrogen into the garden. That's really what we're focusing on. So you can do your research, you can find what you want. I've used Neptunes, I've used Alaska, I've used AgroThrive. I kind of don't care. I just use whatever I get my hands on. It's whatever's available, whatever's affordable, and whatever I can get, which is available. So it's only available and affordable. And the timeline in which I can get it. Because sometimes I run out and I'm like, I need it now. So you can see how that goes. Now, the final thing, which I think turns people off, is cost. Well, why is it so? It's just an extra expense for my garden. Yes, it is an extra expense. For me to fertilize my entire garden for the whole year, it costs me, and when I say the whole year, I mean spring, summer, fall, and even the winter season, it costs me about $50 in fertilizer. That being said, since I started using it, I've gotten more growth and more harvest compared to when I did. And I've always used it to an extent, but I've never really gone, like, until past 5 years, gotten really deep into fertilizers. So this will all kind of, it all washes out at the end, and it actually you end up making money, if you look at it that way, off of the fertilizer, because you get the harvest faster, larger, and stronger. And you save money because you also aren't treating for pests as much, because you're not really getting the pest, because pests will attack weak plants. So we can, I'm sure I'll show you examples sometime throughout the year of that. I missed my opportunity over the winter, but that's okay. So all of these things will kind of spread out and work out for you. Now, I didn't use fertilizer for a long time because I didn't understand it. And I know where people stand when it's really confusing. So that's why my recommendation for you is, if you don't know anything about fertilizer and you want to give it a shot, get a well-balanced fertilizer, granular fertilizer, and add it into your garden once a month. For a bed that's 4x8, I put in about a cup to a cup and a half. And if you don't want to do it every month, just do it when you plant. It won't burn your plants if you're using organic fertilizer. It takes a couple weeks for it to start to activate. By that time, your plants are in the ground, they're getting comfortable, and they're growing, and you're good to go. So that's really my recommendation if you get started, and then you can kind of step it up. Again, we will go over more in detail over this coming seasons, and I will continue to do videos about this because it is a big part of my garden. And I just want you to walk away with this thought. I said this on the Backyard Gardens podcast, and I feel like I need to say it here. If there was no fertilizer, this world would starve. Think about it.
Goodbye.